Welcome to the Vivo Barefoot Health Broadcast. My name is Ben and I've been a barefoot movement coach for over 10 years now. In today's session, we're going to give a transition tips overview. So when we're thinking about transitioning, what we like to talk about is reconnecting with our feet, thinking about our posture and how we stand, our walking skill, our ability to squat, learning the skills of jumping as a micro drill for running. So we've got feet, stand, walk, squat, jump, run. And today's going to be a quick overview of all of those. So number one is to reconnect with our feet. And to do that, we're going to mobilize our feet with our fingers and then think about some coordination drills as well to work on differentiating between our big toe and our other toes. So let's crack into it. You can sit on the floor or sit on a step. First things first, I'm going to bend my big toe down. So let's turn around here. So I'm bending my big toe down and then bending my big toe back up. Now the goal here is to have something like 60 to 90 degrees in the ball of our big toe. And when we bend down the other way, we just want some movement in the ball of the big toe. So this is flexion and extension. So big toe down and big toe up. So you can also apply a little bit of resistance against your big toe while you're moving it. So now I am pulling my big toe up and pushing back down. So pulling my big toe up with the fingers and pushing back down with my big toe. And the same, I can push down with my fingers and resist back up. This is just to help engage that communication with the muscles in our feet and get them working again. So next, let's push our big toe in towards the other toes and try and resist back out. Have you got any control over pulling your big toe out? And the same, we can manually pull the big toe all the way away from the other toes and try to resist with our big toe muscles. So if you're finding it difficult to mobilize them or difficult to engage with your own muscles to move them yourselves without moving your fingers, this is the way to improve it. So the more you can manipulate and move your big toe, and the more you can resist against it, the more able you will be to control your big toe and use it in more complicated movements. Okay, so on the other foot, let's again bend it down, big toe down, big toe back up, push it in towards the other toes, pull it out away from the other toes. And on this note, it is natural, biologically normal for humans to have toes that are wider, or feet that are widest at the toes that are wider than the balls of our feet. If your toes are squashed and narrower than the balls of your feet, this is because of wearing footwear with narrow toe boxes, and over time this unfortunately deforms our toes and squishes them together. So how do we regenerate that? We wear wide, thin, flexible footwear, because that's going to have the biggest influence over the health of your feet, but we can also enhance the improvements that we get from wearing a Vivo Barefoot wear, so wide, thin, flexible footwear, by engaging in these kind of exercises to improve the communication with our feet. So there we go. Big toe down, big toe back up, in towards the other toes, out from the other toes. You can also twist it, so just bending it in its socket. Obviously we're not doing this, we're not trying to twist anything off here. We're just mobilizing. So a few degrees in, a few degrees out, twisting diagonally. And you can also pull your big toe out as well. all with the aim of reconnecting with and mobilizing our feet. So let's just do those last couple on this foot. So the twisting, diagonal, diagonal, bit of twisting, and also pulling the big toe out. Okay, so that's a quick bit of mobilizing our feet. The other things, of course, that we can do is we can work on the coordination of our feet, can work on the coordination of my mouth, can work on the coordination of our feet. So can we do big toe down, little toes up? If you're struggling with these, you can use your fingers to move the toes, or go back to the last step and just work on manually moving your toes forwards and backwards whilst applying a little bit of resistance, and you'll find that those communication pathways with your feet and the muscles in your feet come back. So big toe up, little toes down, little toes up, big toe down. And you really can do these a lot. And you can feel free to vary it, so you can lift all your toes up. You may find this helpful if you struggle to get just your big toe down at first. Lift them all up, and then slowly try and just put the big toe down. Just put the little toes down, keep the big toe up. Splay them while they're in the air, and very slowly put them down to the ground. So again, we recommend that people spend 6 weeks at least just reconnecting with their feet and practicing the other drills that we're going to do now, thinking about how you walk and your squat, and perhaps doing a little bit of jumping, but taking plenty of time. We say minimum 6 weeks before you progress to start running. And really, the prescription and the progression is based on your recovery. So if you've got very painful, immobile feet, it's going to take longer than that. So lifting them all up, all toes up, spread them as wide as you can, and then squish them back down again. All the way up, wide as you can, and very slowly back down to the ground. Okay, now squish your toes together. Try not to scrunch them up, so we're just putting them together as hard as we can, and then splaying them apart. And there are going to be more in-depth videos where we'll spend 20 minutes just going through toe exercises, so look out for those on YouTube. Next, let's think about how we stand. So, standing skill, an upright posture, a well-aligned posture. It's somewhere in the region of ears, over shoulders, over hips, over ankles. Now, of course, there's a lot of room for maneuverability in this, but the idea is we don't want our head very far forward. So bringing our head back, shoulders down but relaxed. We're not in a military pose here. Our hips, we don't want to be either hip chasing very far forward or having our butt sat back in a bucket, so we can use our fingers onto our thigh bone. It's helpful to look in a mirror and make sure you've positioned your index finger and your middle finger roughly either side of the thigh bone, and then feel an even weight pressure on your index and your middle finger. That might cause you to bring your, if you're a hip chaser, it will cause you to bring them back a bit. If your butt's in a bucket, then it might bring your hips forward just slightly. Another good cue is that we want to look down and roughly just see the ends of our toes. Of course, depends if you can see the ends of your toes. So perhaps the hip and using gun fingers on the hips is a great cue for all of us. So standing posture, soft knees, even weight distribution through the feet, from heels to the ball of our big toe to the ball of our little toe. Aligned hips, relaxed shoulders and head not too far forward or military back. We're just in the middle there. Yeah. Okay, and when we move to walking, and this is of course the first things that we're going to do when we transition into wearing Vivo barefoot, we're going to go for a walk. So the cue is to maintain this nice, well-aligned, upright posture, to be thinking about a heel stroke rather than a heel strike. And what we mean there is a long stride and a very heavy heel landing with a straight knee is only really possible in cushioned footwear, in effect painkillers for your feet, stopping your feet from doing its job to tell your brain, ow, that hurts my heel, please don't do that. So when we transition into Vivos or we walk barefoot, it is natural, it is normal, we're getting more information from our heel that we would move from a heavy heel strike to more of a softer, gentler heel stroke underneath the body, just ahead but not too far reaching out, with a soft knee, that well-aligned posture. And the approximate rhythm for walking is 2 steps per second. So 120 steps per minute. And that is a really important cue to help us to maintain that slightly shorter stride, landing closer to under the body with a soft knee so that we are absorbing that impact force rather than fighting against it. Yeah? Okay, so a good little drill that we can practice is just that taking 1 step forward. So as I'm rocking onto my front foot here, I'm feeling the weight go through my foot, so that's around the outside, across the balls, onto the ball of the big toe and into the big toe. And on the back foot, similar, feeling the weight move around the outside of my foot onto the big toe, but there's also a little bit of supination as the foot becomes a rigid lever, and by supination we just mean in that last moment the weight is moving towards the outside of your foot, but actually we're traveling through the foot, through the big toe, with the foot in a rigid position. So rigid just means that as we supinate and go out to the side slightly, the foot becomes a lever, as opposed to on that initial impact where the foot is a mobile adapter. And as you can see there, a little bit of pronation is natural. It's part of the foot's natural shock absorbing system. Okay? So tips for walking: upright posture, 120 steps per minute rhythm, nice fluid heel stroke rather than abrupt heel strike, fluid heel stroke walking through the foot and off the big toe. And it feels smooth even when we're walking on a hard surface when barefoot. Okay, again, science shows that if you put cushioning under your foot, your leg will stiffen according to that cushioning in order to feel the ground. Better to feel the ground with your foot and adjust your body to be softer to handle that impact force. Okay. So, standing and walking. Next, it is really important for human beings to be able to squat. So we all squatted as babies. Squatting is the default seating position of humans, and it's an idea, many of us are lacking a bit of ankle range. Arguably because we don't squat enough, we sit too much, we don't move enough. We also wear shoes often that have a heel raise in them, and if the shoe has a heel raise, then you're permanently walking around with slightly less ankle range than you would do normally. Yeah? But on a positive note, we all squatted perfectly as babies. We can relearn it, and the way to relearn it is perhaps in the first place to just use a little heel raise just to take our ankles out of the equation so that we can practice. And the quick tips are, so we're going to have our feet roughly hip width apart. Got the side view so you can see my back. I'm going to just create a little bit of tension, some torsion, twisting my feet into the floor. So that's turning them out. Yeah, so I'm not actually going to turn my feet out. I'm just going to create a little bit of torsion so that my knees feel like they're going to just track over my feet rather than collapse in. And then we're going to hinge at the hip and at the knee and drop down into that nice, comfortable, deep squat. Now, the goal, of course, is to be able to do this without any heel raise without any heel raise. So over time, you can either use a book and reduce the amount of height. So turn the pages on the book to reduce the height, or just use a thinner bar or a thinner wedge underneath your heel. It may take some weeks and months to get down there. We will get into more detail on things that we can do to improve our ankle dorsiflexion in future sessions. That's our ankle range, as it were. But just give them a go, you know. Practice makes perfect. So can we do that little bit of torsion, twist, drop down, bend at the hip, bend at the knees, go down. Another super important cue is when we are down here, if you clench your glutes. So if we just engage them, you'll find you bob up and down a little bit. So when we are coming back up from a deep squat, use the glutes. If you engage your glutes as you come back up, it's going to take a lot of the stress off your knees. Of course, we're using quads, glutes, all of it. We don't want to underutilize these. Okay, now let's just show what it's like doing squats with our heels flat on the floor. So same thing, just going to twist, hinge at the hip, hinge at the knee, go down. You know, you can use your forearms on your knees, just help to bring your shoulders back and keep your spine aligned. But we can improve our ankle range. The act of doing the deep squat frequently will definitely help. And there are other tips and tricks that we can do to improve our ankle range. Another one, something that's taught a lot, is don't let your knees go over your toes. Of course, it's crucial for our knees to go over our toes. Every time we walk upstairs, knees go over toes. It was a health and safety gone wrong, where the fitness industry has suggested people don't squat with their knees over their feet. It's absolutely normal, it's totally fine, and arguably it's crucial for knee and ankle health to do so. Okay, it's just one other while we're there. You can use a door handle. It's another great way. So I've got this bar, it's approximately that high, excuse me, squatting with my back to you. But what we can do is we can go all the way down to there. You can allow your heels to come off the floor a little bit. And then as you pulse down to the floor, just pulsing your heels down as your knees come forward, with the goal that you can let go of that bar and stay in that nice deep position. One other thing to say, the ideal squat, if we've got enough range in our ankles, will enable us to keep that nice even weight distribution in the tripod. So the heel, the ball of the big toe and the ball of the little toe. And we'll be able to keep that even weight distribution throughout our feet with our big toes locked in the floor whilst doing a deep squat. Take your time, practice, and we'll help with more exercises on ankle range in future sessions. So squatting, really good. And squatting not only is giving us the necessary ankle and hip range, it's also of course improving our strength once we become proficient at the technique, and you can add weight to it. Okay, so next let's have a quick think about how we jump. So jumping is a super important micro drill to learn before we get into running. Now, the difference between walking and running is when we walk, it's natural for us to land just ahead of our body and a heel stroke rather than a heel strike. As soon as we move from walking to jumping, where we're actually leaving the floor, so when we walk there is always one foot in contact with the floor. When we are running, we're hopping from one foot to the other. So now the impact forces are much higher, and please join in. If you ask anybody on the planet to jump up and down on the spot, no one is ever going to jump up and down and land on their heel. It hurts a lot. Now this being said, it's slightly more confused when it comes to elite runners, as there are many fast elite runners that land on their heel and are reported to do so. There is a big difference between landing on your heel just underneath you rather than with a straight leg all the way out in front. Yeah, so heel strike bad, forefoot good is a oversimplification. Equally, if we are going to learn the skill of running and we're going to learn the skill of jumping, then let's do it how it would be natural, biologically normal to do so, and land on our forefoot with a heel kiss. So it's important for endurance running, as opposed to sprinting, that our heel makes contact with the floor in order for our shock absorbers to have a split second where they can switch off before we propel off the floor. Yeah? So the rhythm for jumping is 180 steps per minute. That is 3 steps per second. And I'll count it out for us. It's a very good idea to get a metronome to practice this. You can just get any metronome. I like the Soundbrenner metronome. You can set it up nicely. Yeah, on a 4-3, 3-4 rhythm at 180. But let's do it now. So think about lift when you're jumping, and I'm going to count out the rhythm. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, just forefoot heel kiss. Going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's a great idea to practice jumping on one foot, jumping on 2 feet. I'm going to stop there because in the first place, when we start our jumping, start with just a few rounds of somewhere between 10 to 30 seconds. Now, just practice. If your calves start to get tight after 10 seconds, then that's cool, that's where you start. Much easier to do less than your body is able to and progressively build it up over the coming days. You know, we recommend doing these exercises every other day. And if your calves haven't recovered by 2 days later, take a step back or stay where you are. Yeah, we want progressive adaptation. That's the way to avoid injury. Your progression is based on your recovery, and it's the same for everything, whether it's the toe exercises, your walking distance, your squatting, your jumping, or your running. Your progression to do more is based on your recovery. So it's finding the right amount which just stresses the body a little bit, but not so much that there's the phone, I apologise. But not so much that it stresses our body that we get injured and then we're not able to continue and carry on doing more 2 days later. So this is the key bit, and this is where you've got to figure that out. It's better to start with just 10 seconds of jumping. So let's have another go. So 180 steps per minute, 10 seconds of jumping is whatever that is, 30 jumps, right? Yes. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 8, 9, 10. You can just start with 10 seconds. If it feels super easy, crack on and do 30 seconds, but don't do more than that for at least a few weeks of practicing your jumping. And once you've got those jumps down, and it feels very relaxed, you know, ideally you can do a few rounds of a minute's jumping without your calves and Achilles getting really, really tight. Then you're ready to do a few minutes running. And when we go out and do our running, we want to maintain that nice upright posture, well aligned, quick rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hands and wrists nice and relaxed. Shoulders nice and bouncy. And thinking lift, 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 lift. Just keeping everything nice and relaxed. Arms bouncy and symmetrical. And then it is a matter of slowly building up your time. So there we go. There's 25 minutes of a whirlwind session. Stand, walk, squat, jump, run, and connect with your feet. Please subscribe to the YouTube Health Broadcast. We will be doing more sessions over the coming weeks and look forward to hearing your comments and feedback and supporting you on your transition.